we mic'd up? We're very exposed on the stage suddenly, it's great. Okay, so look, I'm not sure this session needs a great deal of introduction. I think we've all lived inside the AI hype for the last, well, we for the last 18 months, you for the last 6, 7 years. So look, the numbers are insane. We know this, 1 in 4 VC dollars has gone into AI in the last couple of years. 55% of companies are using it, McKinsey says. But I do feel, to be honest, there's a little exhaustion setting in across the industry. So anyway, to talk about this, we have Peter Sarlin. Peter, you're the founder and CEO, or co-founder and CEO of Silo AI, one of Europe's biggest independent AI labs. Maybe just to capture the spirit of the age, I'm going to let AI do the work for me and let you introduce yourself. Maybe you can explain to me a little bit more about Silo AI and who you work with and what you do.
Yeah, happy to do so. Great to be here. So yeah, as you said, I mean, we've been in the space for more than 6 years now. We set up Silo end of 2017. So that was the previous AI hype. And I personally come with an academic background, so done a PhD, been in a professorship, jumped ship from a tenured professorship with my research group to set up Silo as a private AI lab in 2017. We've now grown from 6 people to about 350 today. Still a private AI lab, so a majority of our employees have a PhD in AI-related fields. And indeed, as you said, I mean, and I usually say that Silo being one of the largest, if not the largest, privately owned pure-play AI companies in Europe says more about Europe than it says about us. But yeah, I mean, we deliver models, infrastructure and tooling, or a platform, and then services to help companies build AI at the core of their products. And we can dig deeper into that. That really sort of basically communicates our way of looking at value creation with AI. And we've done that now for 6 years or so, and originally bootstrapped and revenue funded. We more than doubled in size 4 years in a row, and have grown sort of to where we are now by creating value with this technology. And I think that's quite a different path compared to many AI companies out there.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting for us to know a little bit more about the sectors that you work with, because I think they speak to the breadth of the value in AI and the kind of omni-use of the technology. So you work across a variety of different sectors, right? From automotive through to engineering through to...
Yeah, no, indeed. We basically have 3 different segments, and I can run through briefly that and the wide variety of sort of... well, let's put it this way, a wide variety of different industries and use cases where AI is creating value. And then what's really the common denominator and why we are positioned there, in a sense, to win and to create value. But I mean, we work in one of our larger segments is actually not Gen AI or LLM focused, but autonomous vehicles. I mean, we were partnered up with German, North American, Japanese car manufacturers for many years already in building sort of driver assistance features, which is AI. But that's everything ranging from cars to vessels to forestry machines, mining machines. AI becoming an embedded part of the sort of experience in a car or in a vehicle. And the same with a second segment, which focuses on smart devices. So we're working with everything from optimizing image quality on your mobile phone camera to web-scale search engines to medical devices. Philips is our client there. And then third, which we call smart society, which includes a wide range of different industries, and maybe those that are sort of easier to identify, like healthcare, finance, logistics, infrastructure, and so forth. But the common denominator there, and actually everywhere, is really that the companies we work with are sort of software defined in the sense that they're building software at the core of their business, and then AI is sort of elevating their products. And that's the overall way that I look at the market and value creation. That's what AI isn't the product in itself on its own. It's you don't, I mean, ChatGPT is a software product. It's not an AI. And then it sort of includes a model. And in the same way, sort of a car, a mobile phone, an application is a product, and then it might be a combination of software and physical product, or just a software product. And then sort of AI elevates and accelerates value creation at the core of it. And that's basically where we have been operating throughout.
Sure. I mean, I think let's go on to that common denominator, because this kind of multi-use, omni-use technology, it's going to be quite baffling to approach from almost any company looking at it. How do you even begin to advise companies to frame their problem, to frame their investments in AI?
Yeah, that's a very good, I mean, that's a good question. And then it's a good question whether we are the ones to actually be in that position. I mean, usually you have management consultants telling you what to do. Not sure whether that's a good idea either, but basically, I think ultimately it boils down to, if you think about what I just said about our positioning and how we sort of believe we can create value with this technology. And then you have to remember that most of the companies that sort of are creating a business around AI, they aren't actually selling AI. They're selling something else. There's you have hyperscalers selling cloud. You have management consultants selling management consulting, and so forth. You have hardware providers selling hardware. And then if we think about us as a pure play AI player, we need to operate in a different way. And we work with those that are sort of, when you ask the question, which I think is the answer to your sort of question, when you ask the question, should I build or buy? You basically, we are the ones that enable value creation with those that are building. But that's actually, in a sense, should be a tiny share of the sort of parts of your enterprise and organizations where you're benefiting from AI. And I think in majority of use cases out there, you should basically be acquiring software. I mean, you should just be buying a software license to a whatever, or subscription to a product that helps you with the productivity or efficiency or whatever you're looking for, not build your own AI, so to say. And I think that would be the advice that I can see, sort of, thousands and thousands of initiatives out there where you're experimenting and doing proof of concepts and pilots and small initiatives around these sort of tiny point solutions across the enterprise, where you actually shouldn't be building, but you should be sort of just buying a software in which someone has built AI. Yeah. And that's how I think we are, as you referred to. We're using AI when we drive our vehicle, or when we're using a search engine, or when we are sitting in our CRM, or it's everywhere. So in most cases, I think the value is created not by you building something, but actually by you acquiring software that has AI in it.
But presumably for most, certainly larger enterprises, that's going to be a combination of the two. You're going to have a patchwork of built and bought. That's going to be hard to manage, isn't it, that complexity?
Sorry, what's that?
There's going to be a combination of built and bought, because different functions, different...
Yeah, but I mean, it's very I mean, here we have today many that are building software products, industry-leading software products as the target. In order for you to be able to compete in a specific market and be, whether you're an investor or a startup founder, you should be concerned about that specific startup being and putting out an industry-leading product. And then I think AI, in most cases, does play a key role in ensuring that that product is industry-leading, and that you're sort of adding a feature, a capability to that product that is AI-driven. And usually sitting at the core, where you're continuously collecting data and having a feedback loop in place where you're improving over time, and so forth. The same way it's been creating value through the past 10, 15, 20 years, the way we've been building AI. And I think in most of those cases, it's sort of fairly easy to sort of split up where you are actually building, and where it's sort of a question, you're going after a revenue opportunity. Like this is, if you ask McKinsey, it's this 7 trillion opportunity that AI is creating. And it's a big opportunity, yes, but I think the key question when you ask the build or buy question is whether you're going after sort of a productivity and efficiency opportunity, or whether you're going sort of after a revenue and growth opportunity. And in most cases, sort of to this 7 trillion, which sits at the end of the value chain, right? So AI is creating 7 trillion of value, but that's through eventually productivity and efficiency. Now, how do you get to that productivity and efficiency? In most cases, you don't get to that from AI, right? You get to that via a software product, and then eventually to a specific use case within an enterprise, for instance. So I think ultimately, sort of, when you are building your products and thinking about competitive edge, you're going for that revenue and growth opportunity, and it's a very different mindset versus then if you are, just looking for productivity and efficiency, then you're most likely going to just basically acquire or buy a software license and use a product that exists in the market, and good enough is fine. It's not your competitive edge necessarily. Everyone can do that, but that's fine, and so forth.
To the point, that this is a tool rather than the technology itself. I'm interested in that because it feels like we are in a hype cycle where everyone says that AI is their edge, rather than AI is a way to give their product an extra bit of edge. The hype cycle seems to be very intense on that at the moment.
Yeah, it is. But I said during the previous hype cycle already, most people don't remember that we had a hype cycle in 2016, 2017.
Aging ourselves, aren't we?
But it was a hype cycle. It just wasn't equally big. But I already then said that it's here to stay because it sits in your pocket, and it's here to stay because in your everyday life, using search engines, driving a vehicle with driver assistance, whatever, lawnmower that is cutting your grass, or robotic vacuum cleaner, and so forth. It's everywhere, and we use AI on an everyday basis. It's here to stay. And of course, we move in hype cycles. We've always done that. I don't think there's anything different with that. I think one important element to this is that I think the definition of, I come with a technical background, so I've been struggling, I still struggle with the term AI because it doesn't really mean anything, like technology-wise. But I think the good way or sort of the way of defining AI is that once we actually know how to do it, then it stops being AI. So I guess that's sort of what eventually happens. So in the way that AI will now gradually start to predict the next word in our emails and or whatever marketing messages, and in our Microsoft Office or 365 or GitHub Copilot and wherever we use Gen AI and LLM features, then gradually we stop talking actually about now using a large language model, but we're actually using a software product, and it's intelligent, but so should a software product be. So in that sense, I think the AI hype wave is here to stay, and I think then, of course, how value is distributed is a good question, and I might have opinions on that, and it's not maybe the ones that have been sort of most visible throughout the wave.
Let's go into that. Come on, explore that.
No, I think ultimately the sort of value sits in who's the one distributing it, and I think OpenAI has, and OpenAI was founded a year or two before Silo. I personally know the founders fairly well, and they have a very different path to today, and they've done a great job in building and upon open source technology, and putting out now great technology for everyone to use. And I think the good part is that when it comes to a company like OpenAI is that the partnership with Microsoft makes a lot of sense because that gives you distribution, and that's what you eventually need, because AI in itself and on its own isn't really a product. ChatGPT then eventually happened to be a success, but ultimately wasn't necessarily the plan for distribution. And I think you have many other sort of model builders out there which will be struggling with distributing value, and because ultimately the sort of value sort of sits with the ones that ultimately own the end user and distributes the value. So OpenAI is obviously integrating their models in everything from GitHub Copilot to Microsoft 365 and so forth, and that makes a lot of sense. The way we look at this space is that open source is catching up and models are eventually converging when it comes to foundation models. We are contributing with models that cover low resource languages, but that's infrastructure. And then basically we believe that those that own distribution should be the ones that are basically building models that they own and control. And I think that's going to be sort of some of the key winners in the space, and that's of course some of the startups here as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were going to come to that later as it was, but we might as well come to it now. I mean, this is a market that's looking fairly concentrated. There's these big players, as you say, the distribution chain is a complex one. If you're looking to build on the back of a foundation model providers like yourselves, do you need to think about where that model is owned, where it comes from? Do you need to have, in a sense, more of a sense of the sourcing and the understanding of who the players behind the models are?
Yeah, that's actually it's a much more complex question than many understand, because I mean, I think this is the new era of AI. I mean, not much has changed, but what has changed is that we're utilizing foundation models that sort of provides an opportunity for not only sort of the few to innovate, but for the many to innovate, and that's on top of open source foundation models. And when you do that, then I think there are many dimensions, and these are some of the key reasons why we have been building our own open source models. So we have a record amount of compute on Europe's most powerful supercomputer that sits in Finland. We have a record amount of data for open source LLMs that we've been collecting for the past few years and covers 22 trillion tokens. And we're building best-in-class models for all European languages, including, of course, also English, but not with an aim to sort of compete in English, and especially with general-purpose closed-source models. And I think ultimately we're fully open when it comes to weights, when it comes to model architecture, when it comes to for instance, the data that has been used, and then also model training checkpoints, so the checkpoints throughout. And that's what if I would be using a model, which is the answer to your question, that's what I would want to know, to ensure that it's compliant, to ensure sort of what data has ultimately been used to train whatever you use as a starting point. But then after that, I mean, for you to be able to fully benefit from that, in most cases, but pretty much all, you would need to rely on an open source model, so that you can ultimately control and own whatever you are building. And I think one of the key reasons, which people usually don't think of, is that the models we use today aren't going to be the best models in a year or two. So what's the key element to sort of succeed with today? It's to actually identify the sort of use cases and start to collect unique data, which is the differentiator for you, and be able to control and own that, both the data and the model, so that whenever in 2 years' time you tap into the best open source model at that point, you actually sit with something that is proprietary and differentiating you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm interested for you to explore a little bit more around the neglected languages side of this. Can you explain, it's maybe not intuitive for everyone, why that's so significant? What is the downstream effect of having that, or not having this kind of capability in other languages?
Yeah. So I think that's actually also a fairly complex topic in the sense that it sort of has implications from many perspectives. One is the sort of more generic digital sovereignty question, and I think it's important because ultimately the reasoning capability of the models, both closed source and open source today, it descends from English-speaking data and English-speaking countries to a large extent. And I usually, when people ask me what's low resource languages, well, it's all except for English, because that's a reality if you look at the sort of data that is accessible. Having models that are representative to the specific region in terms of culture, values, the sort of tone of voice, the way you have a discussion, the specific words you use, and ultimately the language. I think that's crucial, and we have to remember that these models are just token predictors, word predictors. They do nothing else. Yes, they have emergent properties in that they can have long conversations and a dialogue with you, and they have long context windows, so that dialogue makes a lot of sense. But ultimately, you're just teaching a model to predict the next word, and that's technically what the models are doing. And hence, I think the crucial item which we are doing with the model, we released a model called Poro, and 2 weeks back we released a model family called Viking, which basically is gradually expanding to include all European or official EU languages and code, and where we prove that the approach we take gives more performant, low resource language models or more performant models for the European small languages, and being still on par with English or in English. And I think the crucial item, in addition to the sovereignty part of it, which I think is important for the sort of society as a whole, that the models that are impacting society are not only representing sort of a specific region or a specific culture, but then, like, more important, and especially I guess for the audience here, startups, investors, more important is what's the sort of where does value eventually end up? And if the organizations that own the models that you tap into and just sort of use in terms of closed source models sit elsewhere, then eventually value is going to sort of also go elsewhere. And that implies in practice that you need performant open source models to be able to build technology for which value stays within that specific region. And I think from a European perspective, that's actually a very, very crucial topic, because ultimately, eventually, value will end up somewhere else unless we succeed with that.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. Shall we try and open up for questions?
Sure.
Yeah, against advice, we've decided to open questions. I don't know if there's a microphone, but maybe if you're welcome, if you're happy to shout.
That's a good question. So the question was whether it works for Latvian, whether our models like Viking work for Latvian or Estonian. Latvian and Estonian are not included in Viking. Viking includes English, programming languages, Finnish, Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, and Icelandic. So the Nordic languages and English and programming languages. We are training at the moment a model that includes all official EU languages. So they will be included, yes. And I think the reality is that there is no one yet out there that has been able to build and create sort of performant multilingual models. So this is an open research question. We published a large number of papers in this field. And the approach that we are taking is a unique approach to include sort of many languages, and especially include small languages, which implies that you, through a cross-lingual signal from the larger languages, are able to include and incorporate the low-resource languages in building a reasoning capability. And that's what we are doing at the moment. So yes, they will be included, and they will be also not only included through a translation capability, which is what happens in most models today, but in actually building the sort of core logic and reasoning capability of the model.
Take a moment. Are there any other questions? Silence. All right, maybe I'll go in then. We've mentioned it a couple of times. This isn't the first boom. We're starting to see the very early edges of people losing some of the momentum from the start, and I feel like we're maybe at the point where people are aware of the sheer scale of investment. You mentioned 7 trillion. Sam Altman's mentioned 7 trillion quite a few times just to keep the party going. So I'm interested. How long is the party going to keep going? And but on a more serious note, when we start to see the kind of societal limits of AI and the path that it's on right now, the money involved, the energy, the water, the data, how is that going to impact the industry? Is the boom going to come to an end? And if it does, how does that affect everyone who's kind of building their businesses on these models?
So what I said already many years back was that what happened in self-driving was that and yes, I know it's a bit of a detour, but Tesla triggered this sort of very large investment wave into self-driving technology with the sort of ambition to build FSD, full self-driving. If you ask me, I don't think we still know what technology is going to take us to FSD, the way it's been defined. But at the same time, this investment wave has led to technology that is part of the vehicles we drive today, and it's driver assistance, it's creating value. And I think this investment wave and hype wave, as you defined it, is has similar traits. So, OpenAI with an ambition to build AGI, which again, if you ask me, I don't think anyone knows what technology is going to take us there, triggered a significant investment wave into Gen AI and LLM technology. And I don't think it's going to take us to AGI, but it is going to be sort of embedded in the products we use on an everyday basis, and I think that eventually will happen, and then if value trickles down. So the question is really who will benefit from that, and what's the path to that? And as I've said, I think that implies pretty much every single sort of vertical and horizontal, but especially software products out there where it's AI will and LLMs, Gen AI will be part of everything from media to finance, healthcare, are the CRMs we use, the ERPs we use, so enterprise software, and so forth. And then ultimately, how does that happen? I think that happens through open source models. In majority of cases, open source models that are specialized for specific use cases, and that's basically what we at Silo do. So we offer a platform, a model as a service platform or model serving platform that allows you to tap into leading open source models, our models, but also other open source models, and optimize them for specific use cases. So continuously learn through usage feedback, and then basically have trustworthiness ensured by vector databases on the side. And that puts you in a position as a software company to own and control the models and the data without actually investing into sort of building your own sizable team and infrastructure and tooling and so forth. And that's how I think sort of value will eventually sort of accrue.
That makes sense. We're pretty much at time. I mean, we might have time for one quick question if anyone has a hand up, but if not, maybe we'll wrap it up. All right. Thanks a lot, Peter. It's fascinating.
Thanks a lot. Good.
Yeah, no question.